My daughter says she's worried about my health. Her husband says he's worried about the maintenance. Funny how their concern started right after he ran the numbers on what my 5 acres are worth. Okay, so I'm 73 years old. I own a 5-acre property with a beautiful house, gardens, a small orchard and a pond. I've maintained it for 40 years. 40 years, I know every tree, every flower bed, every inch of fence line. I love this property. It's my life's work, my sanctuary, my home. My daughter Monica, she thinks it's too much work. She's been saying it for 6 months, every visit, every phone call. Mum, this property is just too much. You can't keep up with it. You're going to hurt yourself. You need to sell. But here's the thing, I can keep up with it. I have a gardener who comes twice a week. I have a handyman on call. I have systems. The property runs smoothly. I'm not struggling, I'm thriving. But Monica won't let it go. Mum, think about how much work this is. The lawn alone is 1.5 acres. The gardens need constant attention. The pond needs maintenance. It's too much for one person. One person who has help. One person who's been doing this for 4 decades. But she kept pushing. And I started to suspect this wasn't about my well-being. This was about something else. Then one day Monica brought her husband Steve with her. Steve works in real estate development. Convenient, right? They sat me down, very serious, very concerned. Mum, we've been thinking this property is worth a lot of money. If you sold it, you could buy a nice condo, something manageable, something safe, and you'd have money left over for retirement, for emergencies, for US to help manage. For US to help manage. There it was, the real reason. They didn't care about the property being too much work. They wanted me to sell it so they could benefit, either through inheritance now instead of later, or through helping manage my money, which really means controlling it. I'm not selling, I said firmly. Monica's face tightened. Mum, you're being stubborn. This property is too much work and you're not getting any younger. What happens when you can't maintain it? When something breaks and you can't fix it? When you fall and there's no one here? Fear tactics. Classic manipulation. I have systems in place. I have help. I'm fine. Steve jumped in. His turn. But the cost of that help, the gardener, the handyman, the property taxes, the insurance, it all adds up. Wouldn't it be easier to just let it go? Let it go? Let go of 40 years of work, of my home? No, it wouldn't be easier. It would be devastating. This property is my life. Monica stood up, frustrated now. Fine, if you won't sell, then at least hire a full-time caretaker, someone who can handle the heavy work, someone reliable. 'Cause frankly, Mom, we worry. We can't keep coming out here to check on you. We have our own lives. Their own lives, their lives, not mine, theirs. That's when the idea hit me. A brilliant idea, a perfectly legal, completely justified, absolutely hilarious idea. You're right, I said slowly, thinking it through. I should hire a full-time caretaker, someone who knows the property, someone invested in keeping it beautiful, someone... I looked directly at Steve. Someone like Steve. Silence. Complete frozen silence. Steve's face went from smug to confused. What? You're in real estate. You understand property management. You know how to maintain things. You'd be perfect. And you said yourself, you're worried about me. This way, you can help directly. Make sure everything's handled. Make sure I'm safe. Monica found her voice first. Mum, Steve has a job. He can't just He can do it part-time, weekends, evenings, a few hours here and there. I'll pay him, of course, let's say $500 a week. That's fair for about 15 hours of work. Lawn care, garden maintenance, repairs, pond upkeep. Perfectly reasonable. Steve was shaking his head. I don't think, unless you think the property isn't that much work, in which case I guess I don't need to sell after all. Checkmate. He couldn't argue that the property was too much work while also refusing to help maintain it. That would expose the whole con. Monica tried damage control. Mom, we can just hire a professional. But Steve is a professional. Real estate development, property management. He's the perfect candidate, and his family. He cares about my well-being. Don't you, Steve? Steve looked trapped because I'd backed him into a corner. If he said no, he'd be admitting he didn't actually care, that this was all about money, about selling the property, about benefiting them. I suppose I could help out. A little. Wonderful. I'll draw up a contract, make it official. You start next weekend. I hired a lawyer, a good lawyer, drew up a legitimate caretaker contract, detailed responsibilities, hourly requirements, performance standards, penalties for not fulfilling duties. It was ironclad, legal, binding. Steve would be responsible for mowing the entire lawn, 1.5 acres every week, trimming hedges, weeding gardens, cleaning the pond filter, minor repairs, 15 hours minimum per week, $500 payment. If he failed to complete tasks, financial penalties. If he quit without notice, he'd forfeit his final payment. It was perfect. Steve signed it. He had to. Because if he refused, Monica's whole too much work narrative would fall apart. He couldn't say the property was overwhelming while simultaneously refusing to help. So he signed, and he started the following Saturday. I watched from my kitchen window as he arrived, 9 a.m, wearing jeans and a t-shirt, looking confident, like this would be easy, like 15 hours a week was nothing. He grabbed the lawnmower from the shed, started on the front lawn. By 11 a.m, he'd finished maybe a quarter of it. By noon, he was red, sweating, struggling. He took a break, sat in the shade, drank water, looked at the remaining lawn with horror. The 1.5 acres that I'd told him about, he hadn't truly comprehended how big that was, how much work that was. By 3 p.m, he'd finished the front and half the back. The mower ran out of gas. He had to refill it. Keep going. By 6 p.m, 9 hours later, he'd finished mowing. Just mowing. He still had hedges to trim, gardens to weed. He looked destroyed. Actually, physically destroyed. "How's it going?" I called from the porch. Sweet voice, innocent voice. He looked at me like I'd betrayed him. It's a lot, is it? I thought you said this property wasn't that much work, that I should be able to handle it easily. He didn't answer, just packed up his tools and left. Week 2, he came back, required to by contract. This time, he brought hedge trimmers, electric ones, expensive ones. He spent 6 hours trimming hedges. The property has a lot of hedges, 40 years of growth, 40 years of established hedges that need precise trimming. By the end of the day, his arms were shaking. He could barely lift them. "Don't forget the gardens," I called cheerfully. "The weeds are really taking over the rose beds." He looked at the rose beds, at the weeds, at the work, and I saw it. The exact moment he realised what he'd signed up for, the exact moment he understood that this property, my property that he'd insisted was too much, was actually a full-time job. Not a 15-hour-a-week side gig, a full-time job that I'd been managing with help for 40 years, that I loved managing. That wasn't too much, wasn't overwhelming, was just work. Good, satisfying, meaningful work. Week 3, Monica called. Her voice was tight, angry. Mum, Steve is exhausted. He can barely move. His back hurts. His hands are blistered. This is too much. Too much? But he's only working 15 hours a week. And you said the property was so overwhelming, so much work. Surely 15 hours is manageable. Silence, guilty silence. He wants to quit. He can't. Not without forfeiting his last 2 payments. It's in the contract he signed, willingly, eagerly even. Mum, this is ridiculous. What's ridiculous? Hiring help? Ensuring the property is maintained? Providing employment for my son-in-law? This was your idea, Monica. You said I needed help. So I got help. I hired Steve, your husband, who volunteered, who said he cared about my well-being. More silence because she knew she'd been caught, knew I'd flipped her manipulation back on her, on them. Please, just let him out of the contract. Why? Is the property too much work for him, even with just 15 hours a week? Because if it's too much for a 45-year-old man, imagine how it would be for a 73-year-old woman. Oh, wait, I've been doing it for 40 years with help, professional help I pay for, help that doesn't complain, help that doesn't quit after 3 weeks. I let that sink in, let her feel it. So here's what's going to happen. Steve finishes his contract. All 8 weeks he does the work, he fulfills his obligations. And then we never talk about selling this property again, ever. Mom, because clearly it's not too much work for me, but it is too much work for him, which means your whole concern was fake, was manipulation, was about getting me to sell so you could benefit, so Steve could develop it, so you could profit. Well, tough. This property is mine, and it's staying mine until I decide otherwise. Not you, not Steve, me. She hung up, but Steve kept coming. Week 4, week 5, week 6, getting more exhausted, more resentful, more broken. I watched him work, struggle, suffer, and I felt good, not cruel, not vindictive, just validated, because this was proof that the property wasn't too much, proof that I'd been managing it successfully, proof that Monica's concern was fake. Week 8, the final week, Steve arrived looking defeated. He did his tasks slowly, carefully, without complaint. And when he finished, I handed him his final check. Thank you for your service, Steve. The property looks beautiful. You did good work. He took the check, looked at me, and said very quietly, I'm sorry for underestimating this place. And you, Monica and I, we were wrong. This property is a lot of work, but you've been handling it successfully for decades. I see that now. I nodded. Apology accepted. Now go home, rest, and tell my daughter that this conversation is closed. I'm keeping my property, I'm keeping my home, and if she brings it up again, I'll hire you for another 8 weeks. His eyes went wide. Please don't, I smiled. Then we have an understanding. He left, quickly, gratefully, carefully. Monica called that night, defeated, apologetic. I'm sorry, Mom. We shouldn't have pushed. You're right. The property is yours, and you're managing it perfectly. We won't bring it up again. Good, because if you do, I have Steve's contact information and a new contract ready to go. This one's for 12 weeks. She laughed, weak laugh, defeated laugh. Point taken. It's been 6 months. Monica visits regularly, but she doesn't mention selling, doesn't talk about the property being too much, doesn't suggest condos or retirement communities. She just visits, enjoys the gardens, appreciates the work I've put in, respects my choice. And Steve sends me a Christmas card every year now with a note that says, "Thank you for teaching me about real work and real dedication. Your property is beautiful." So if this story made you reconsider pressuring your elderly parents or made you appreciate property maintenance, hit like and subscribe, because I've got more stories. Stories about children who weaponised concern, stories about caretaker contracts that backfired perfectly, stories about 73-year-old women who hired their sons-in-law and destroyed them with 15 hours of weekly lawn care. Spoiler alert, the property isn't too much. The entitlement is too much. The manipulation is too much. The assumption that elderly people can't manage their own lives, that's too much. Want to tell me my property is too much work? Fine, come do the work for 8 weeks for money, under contract, and then tell me how overwhelming it is. Tell me how I can't handle it. Tell me I should sell. Go ahead, I dare you, because I'll hand you a lawnmower, a pair of hedge trimmers, a list of tasks, and a contract. And 8 weeks later, you'll be begging me to keep the property, to never sell, to never change anything, because you'll understand, finally understand, that this isn't too much work. This is love. This is dedication. This is 40 years of life, and you can't put a price on that. Though Steve tried. $500 a week for 8 weeks. $4,000 total to learn that lesson. Best money I ever spent.